Hello and welcome to the explanation phase. I'm and today we're learning the 1 to a dozen player game, Gaslands, designed by Mike Hutchinson and published by Osprey Games. Gaslands is a game of post-apocalyptic vehicular mayhem. You drive one or more vehicles in a death race, to cross the finish line first or be the last vehicle standing. Gaslands combines the joys of toy cars with simple and intuitive rules to create a fast and furious combat racing game. Or an excellent Mario Kart simulator. Either way, buckle up. It's time to learn how to play. To play Gaslands, you'll need some toy cars, some D6s, and some tokens for various things. I also like to use some sticky tack to keep my cars from rolling around all over the place. Like so. Then you'll have some crafting to do, so head on over to gaslands.com and download the movement templates, skid dice labels, and dashboard cards. I mounted my movement templates on chipboard, but you could use cardboard or foam core or cardstock or whatever. The skid dice labels I stuck on some dice with a glue stick. The dashboard cards I put in some sleeves so I could track damage with a dry erase pen. And with that all assembled, we're ready to begin. We'll begin with an overview of how to play. Gaslands is played in a series of rounds, and each round is subdivided into 6 gear phases. These gear phases are associated with the gear that your vehicle is in. For instance, this green car is in gear 1, and this red car is in gear 3. This matters because in each gear phase, every vehicle that is at that gear or higher gets to activate. So for instance, in gear phase 1, both of these vehicles will go. But in gear phase 2, if the green car has not geared up, it will not activate. During an activation, a vehicle chooses a template, a movement template, and places it in front of the vehicle, travels to the end, and then has an opportunity to fire any weapons. Next, players check if any vehicle has 6 or more hazard tokens, and if so, they wipe out. And then play passes the next vehicle. Then when all vehicles have gone, we gear up to the next gear phase and repeat until the end, and then we reset to the next round and back to gear phase 1. Play continues until someone has met the victory conditions or they're the only car remaining. Speaking of cars, let's take a closer look at a vehicle's stats. Vehicles have 5 stats: max gear, crew, handling, hull value, weight class, and this box contains their weapons and other gear. The vehicle's current gear, which is shown on this dice, can never exceed its max gear value. The crew value affects how many attacks a vehicle can make in its attack step. Handling is the max number of skid dice a vehicle can roll during its activation. We'll explain skid dice in more detail during the movement step. The hull value of the vehicle is shown by these empty squares. A vehicle begins the game with a number of hull points equal to its hull value. If it ever runs out of hull points, it's wrecked. Vehicles also come in one of 3 weight classes: heavyweight, middleweight, or lightweight. The weight of a vehicle affects how it does in collisions. During the game, a vehicle will also gain hazard tokens, and they'll be placed on the dashboard card. Now that we've covered vehicle dashboards, let's learn the basics of setting up a game. Setup will vary based on the scenario, but for demonstration purposes, I'll set up a simplified death race. And we're all set up. Over here we've got our starting line, and over here our finish line. Both are a long straight long, and about 3 straights away from each other. And all vehicles are set to gear phase 1. Next we got to set up our vehicles, so players will roll off. The winning player will take pole position. The player in pole position will set up a vehicle first on the starting grid. Then, proceeding in clockwise order, players will alternate, placing their vehicles on the starting grid. Vehicles can never be touching each other on the starting grid. If you have more vehicles than will fit in one row, you start placing them behind the front row, like so. And you cannot place a vehicle in a further back row when there's still space in a further up row. And that's the setup. The goal of the death race is to be the first player to get a vehicle across the finish line, or have the last vehicle on the table. Now that we understand the basic setup, we'll learn how to activate a vehicle. At the beginning of the round, the player in pole position will select one of their qualifying vehicles to activate. If there's a qualifying vehicle, that player must choose one of them to activate. A vehicle is qualified if it has not yet activated in this gear phase, and their current gear value is equal to or greater than the current gear phase. So no going twice in the same gear phase. When a vehicle is chosen to activate, it will move through 3 steps in order: the movement step, the attack step, and the wipeout step. During your vehicle's movement step, you'll do the following things in order. First, select a movement template. Then, place it in front of your vehicle. After that, you can roll skid dice up to your handling value. Then, spend any shift results that you got from skid dice or from taking a trivial maneuver to do a variety of effects. Then, for each uncancelled hazard, spin, or slide result, gain 1 hazard token. If you have any uncancelled slide result, now place the slide exit template. The slide exit template notches into the groove on your movement template. This modifies the final position your vehicle will end up in. Now it's time to actually move the vehicle. If the vehicle didn't slide, it would move down this template, and if it ran into anything, it would trigger a collision. If it had triggered a slide, it would travel down this template, then down the slide template, and end up here. Also triggering any collision if it ran into a vehicle or obstacle along the path. Then if you had any uncancelled spin result, your vehicle spins up to 90 degrees. So you could just leave it here, or you could move it up to 90 degrees. This movement can also trigger collisions. Now that we understand the flow of the movement step, we're going to learn about movement templates, skid dice, and collisions. And you begin your movement step by selecting a permitted movement template. A movement template is permitted if the gear the vehicle is in appears on the movement template. So for instance, this turn can be used by vehicles in gear 1, 2, 3, and 4. Whereas this long straight can only be used by vehicles in gears 5 and 6. Also look out for these hazardous maneuver icons. If you select a movement template and are in a gear corresponding to a hazardous maneuver icon, you immediately gain a hazard token. Once you've selected a template, you place it in front of your vehicle, directly in the center, perpendicular to its front. So no offsetting it like this, but you can place it either way up, with one exception. Straight templates have to be placed so that their slide exit point is toward the front. We'll explain more about slide exit points in a moment. Also remember, once you've touched a template, that's it, you've got to use that one. No infinitely checking which template is the best in your situation. After you place your template, it's time to roll skid dice. This vehicle has a handling of 3, so it can roll up to 3 skid dice. Now, you don't have to roll any skid dice if you don't want to, but skid dice will help you change gears and change your final position, including allowing you to use that slide exit point. After you've rolled your skid dice, if you don't like the result, you can choose to push it. If you do, pick up any dice you don't want and re-roll them. Afterward, you gain 1 hazard token. You can only push it once per activation. We'll go over the faces of the skid dice now. This is the distribution of results on a skid dice. 3 shift results, 1 spin, 1 slide, and 1 hazard. After rolling your skid dice, you can spend your shift results in 4 ways. You can discard a shift to discard a spin, slide, or hazard result. Or you can spin a shift to go up 1 gear or down 1 gear. If you do this, you gain 1 hazard token. You can also spend a shift to discard 1 hazard token from your vehicle. The last thing you can do with the shift result is just discard it without using it. When you would spend shift results, check your movement template and see if you took a trivial maneuver. If you took a trivial maneuver, which is denoted with this little symbol, then you gain a free shift result. This movement template is only trivial if it's taken in the first gear. Then, after gaining a hazard token for each uncancelled spin, slide, and hazard result, it's time to move your vehicle to its final position. Imagining we had no spins or slides, we would move the vehicle down to the end of the template, and it would be placed perpendicular and directly in the center of the end of the movement template. It wouldn't be turned, it wouldn't be off center. If your movement template would overlap an obstruction, or your final position would overlap an obstruction, you trigger a collision. Collisions interrupt the normal flow of the game and are resolved immediately. Once you've determined that a collision will occur, your next step is to find your interrupted final position. To do this, drive your vehicle down the center of your template, overlapping as much of the template as you can, until it comes into contact with an obstruction. Then leave the vehicle in contact with the obstruction. This is your interrupted final position. One little wrinkle with collisions. When you are checking to see if you have triggered a collision, you only check to see if an obstruction has overlapped the movement template or the final position of your vehicle. So in this case, the template is clear, so it can travel down it, but the final position is obstructed. So a collision has been triggered. Now, to find the final position of the vehicle, we drive it down the template until it comes into contact with something. But because this vehicle is extra wide, it's come into contact with this wall, even though it wasn't going to collide with that until a collision was triggered. So in this case, if there had been no obstruction down here, this extra wide vehicle would simply have moved normally with no collision, even though it would seem like it would hit that wall. So it's a little nuance that requires a little bit of cinematic imagination. When determining whether you've triggered a collision while using a slide exit template, you ignore the second half of the movement template. So in this case, everything past this arrow in the center of the template is ignored. So no collision will be triggered, and the vehicle will be placed in its final position. Additionally, if a collision was triggered by an obstructed final position, the vehicle would move down the template, ignoring the part after the slide exit point, and then find its new final position after coming into contact with the obstruction. One additional note about slide exit points. At the end of it, you can place your vehicle facing in either direction. And then if you would spin, you could then spin your vehicle 90 degrees. It's important to note that collisions only occur during collision windows, which happen at particular points in each phase, typically after a vehicle moves. Now on to resolving a collision. We'll start off by resolving a collision between 2 vehicles. To resolve a collision, we follow 7 steps in order. First, we determine orientation. A collision can be a T-bone, a tailgate, or it can be head-on. If the orientation is unclear because you're striking on the front edge of the vehicle, rule it as a head-on collision. And if it's unclear because you're striking the back edge of a vehicle, rule it as a T-bone. In the case of the active vehicle is reversing, you treat its rear edge as its front edge. Then, starting with the active player, you go in clockwise order, and players declare their reactions. They can either attempt a smash attack, or they can evade. Taking a smash attack reaction increases your odds of damaging the other vehicle, but taking an evade reduces your chance of taking any hits. Each participant that chose to make a smash attack now determines how many attack dice they will roll. This number is modified by the orientation of the collision, by the gear values of the vehicles, and the relative weight classes of the vehicles. So first, how does orientation affect a smash attack? If it's a tailgate collision, add a number of dice to your smash attack equal to the faster vehicle's gear value minus the slower vehicle's gear value, to a minimum of 0. So in this case, the green vehicle is moving at gear phase 1, the red vehicle is moving in gear phase 2. So no matter which vehicle chooses to make a smash attack, they will add 1 die to their pool because of the collision's orientation. If it's a T-bone collision, you'll add attack dice equal to your current gear. So in this case, if the green vehicle made a smash attack, it would add 1 die. Whereas if the red vehicle made a smash attack, it would add 2 dice. And if it's a head-on collision, you add attack dice equal to the gear values of both vehicles added together. So in this case, the green and red vehicle would have 3 attack dice. Then, for each weight class you are heavier than the other vehicle, gain 2 more attack dice. Or, if your vehicle is lighter, lose 1 attack die for each weight class you are lighter. In this case, since they're both middleweight, there is no modification. But if a lightweight buggy was crashing into a heavyweight vehicle, the buggy would have -2 to its attack roll, the heavyweight vehicle would have +4. Then each player that made a smash attack rolls their attack dice and counts every 4+ as a hit, and each natural 6 as a critical hit. That causes 2 hits. In this case, the green vehicle got 1 hit and 1 crit, for a total of 3 hits, and the red vehicle got 1/6, which is 2 hits. Then damage is dealt simultaneously. For each hit your opponent scored, cross off 1 hull point on that vehicle. So that's what would happen if both vehicles chose the smash attack reaction. However, if one of them chose to take the evade action, instead of calculating their smash attack dice and rolling a smash attack, they would instead calculate their evade dice and roll an evade. They would roll a number of evade dice equal to their current gear value. So if the red vehicle took an evade, it would roll 2 dice. Then for each 6 it scored, it would ignore 1 hit. In this case, it didn't ignore any. If both participants chose to evade rather than make smash attacks, you don't roll any attack dice, and each vehicle just takes 1 hazard token. If either vehicle chose to make a smash attack, however, both vehicles will gain 2 hazard tokens at the end of the exchange. And that's how you resolve collisions between vehicles. But what if you run into an obstacle? Collisions with non-vehicular obstacles count as head-on collisions versus a Gear 0 vehicle. And the object always counts as taking a smash attack reaction. These crates won't be hopping out of the way. The weight class of the obstacle is determined by the type of obstacle that it is, and players should agree on the types of the various terrain elements before playing. If the obstacle is destructible, after the collision is resolved, you remove it. Then, if there's nothing obstructing the path of the vehicle active vehicle continues on toward its original final position, ending there or triggering more collisions along the way. And unless the obstacle or vehicle is removed from play, the colliding vehicle remains in contact with the obstruction it ran into. Before we move on from the movement step, there is one rule that is helpful to know when you're in a tight spot. If you start the movement phase in contact with an obstruction, you ignore that obstruction. So you can move right through it. You'll still collide with anything that your movement template or your final position overlap. And if you collide with something and your interrupted final position would be blocked by the obstruction that you're ignoring, because you can't place the car here, you just don't move at all. And that wraps up the movement step. Next, your crew members will have an opportunity to make attacks with their weapons during the attack step. And the first thing to note about the attack step is a vehicle cannot make attacks if it's in contact with an obstruction. The crew is simply too distracted to use their weapons. But before we talk about how to resolve an attack, let's cover the 3 standard qualities of the various weapons available to your crew. Weapons have range, facing, and attack dice. The range of a weapon determines which template is used to measure distance for the attack. For short, medium, and long range, you use the corresponding movement templates. For double range, you use the medium template and long template end to end. And if the weapon has a range of large or small burst, you use the appropriate burst template. The facing of a weapon determines which side of the vehicle you draw a line of sight from. For front, side, and rear facing weapons, you place the template exactly parallel with that side of the vehicle, but the template does not need to be centered on that side. It can be offset like this, or like this, and it can slide anywhere along that side. It just has to be touching that facing. If your weapon has a 360-degree firing arc, then the range template just has to be touching any edge of the vehicle. The attack value of the weapon is how many d6s you roll for the attack. With that squared away, during the attack step, a vehicle can make a number of attacks up to its crew value. But each weapon on the vehicle can only be used once in each attack step. Bear in mind, every crew member counts as having a handgun. So, this green car with a crew value of 2 could fire its front-mounted machine gun once and a handgun once, or it could fire handguns twice. The first step of the attack step is to declare targets and check range. Remember, you can pre-measure your range before declaring your targets. And you can only target other vehicles unless another target is specified by the scenario. You can, however, target enemy or friendly vehicles. Sometimes you gotta take one for the team. It's the green car's attack step, so we'll target the red car with the front-mounted machine gun and the red buggy with the handgun. The front-mounted machine gun has double range, so that puts the red car in range easily. And the handgun has medium range and is crew-fired, so it has a 360-degree firing arc, putting the buggy easily in range. Then we roll the attack dice. The front-mounted machine gun is a 2d6 weapon and the handgun is a 1d6 weapon. Now, if you targeted a vehicle with more than one weapon, you'll roll all the attack dice against it at the same time. We'll roll the machine gun first. Each 4+ is a hit, and a result of a 6 is a critical and counts as 2 hits. 6s will always be crits, but if there's cover in between you and your target, then you will only hit on 5s. Your target has cover if any part of your range template touches an obstruction before reaching your target. After hits are calculated, but before hull points are lost, there is a collision window in the event that some special rule has pushed a vehicle or pulled a vehicle into another vehicle. Then the defender rolls evade dice equal to their current gear value, and they cancel hits on rolls of 6. So in this case, the red car is in gear 2, so he'll roll 2 dice and cancel 1 hit. The defending vehicle then takes 1 point of damage for each uncancelled hit and removes that many hull points. So in this case, the red car will take 2 hits. There are lots of weapons in Gaslands with special abilities, including droppable hazards, a la the banana peels in Mario Kart, but I will leave you to discover all those weapons on your own. So what happens when you lose all your hull points? Your vehicle gets wrecked. Let's imagine this red vehicle has lost all of its hull points. When you get wrecked, you take the following 4 steps in order. First, the vehicle skids to a stop, meaning the vehicle is forced to move a short move forward. This, of course, can cause collisions. Then the vehicle resets. Set it to gear phase 1, and remove any hazard tokens that it may have. Then you roll a d6. If you get a 6, the vehicle explodes. If you get any other number, nothing happens. But if the vehicle explodes, you make an attack against all other vehicles that are within medium range in a 360-degree arc. You roll 2d6 if the vehicle is lightweight, and 2d6 more for each weight class bigger it is. Vehicles affected by the explosion attack can roll evasion as normal. The explosion attack is made with the blast special rule, meaning that any vehicle that receives an uncancelled hit from the explosion also receives a hazard token. After resolving this explosion attack, the exploding vehicle is removed from the table. But in the much more likely event that the vehicle getting wrecked did not roll a 6 on the explosion check, flip the vehicle over. It is now a wreck, which counts as a destructible obstacle. It is no longer a vehicle. So if any vehicle runs into the wreck, they'll have a collision as normal and the wreck will be removed. Now, if a vehicle becomes wrecked as the result of a collision, say because they took damage from a smash attack, remove the wrecked vehicle from play after doing all the previously outlined steps. Also, if a vehicle that is getting wrecked collides with something while skidding, you remove it from play at the end of the getting wrecked process. And that's how you handle getting wrecked. We'll move on to the final step of a vehicle's activation, the Wipeout Step. After moving and attacking, the final step of a vehicle's activation is the Wipeout Step. Starting with the active player and going clockwise, check to see if any vehicle, not just the active vehicle, has 6 or more hazard tokens, and if they do, resolve a wipeout for that vehicle. When a vehicle wipes out, follow this sequence. First, we check to see if the vehicle flips. To do this, roll a die. If the result is lower than the vehicle's current gear, the vehicle flips. So in this case, the green car would not flip because he rolled over his gear value, not under it. But if the flip check result is lower than your current gear, your vehicle flips. When a vehicle flips, it immediately suffers 2 non-evadable hits and then makes a medium straight move directly forward. During this move, it ignores all obstructions and vehicles, though there is a collision window at the end of the move. So the vehicle can't collide with anything that would obstruct the path of the template, but it will collide with anything that obstructs its final position. Then, whether the vehicle flipped or not, you reset all of the hazard tokens on the vehicle, and you set its gear down to 1. Finally, to represent that the vehicle lost control, the player sitting clockwise of the wiping out player pivots the vehicle to face any direction. This also creates another collision window. So, the red player turns the car to face backwards, as far away from the finish line as he can. Now that the active player has resolved their wipeout, we continue in clockwise order and resolve any more wipeouts, in this case the red vehicle. After movement, attack, and wipeout steps have been completed, that concludes a vehicle's activation. Play then passes to the next player in clockwise order, who chooses a qualifying vehicle to activate. If they cannot, they pass and play proceeds to the next player. And play continues through gear phases and rounds until players meet the victory conditions. And that's all you need to know to get started playing Gaslands. Gaslands Refuelled also contains rules for building your own team, loads of vehicle options, and an array of weapons to choose from, as well as rules for campaign play. But I'll leave you to explore those rules on your own. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below and I'll respond to them as I'm able. To accelerate this video's growth, you can hit the like button, and if you want to be notified when we release more how to plays, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon. And if you want to join us in our mission to make minis games more accessible, consider joining us over on Ko-Fi. Until next time, thanks for watching.